Today's brief video, I want to share with you guys a relapse prevention plan that's helped me ever since I made that decision to put down nicotine, THC, energy drinks, and adult media content. If you're new to the channel, my name's Dr. Frank. I'm the founder of AddictionMindset recovery coaching programs, which are dedicated to helping people quit those substances. Now, we have a ton of more paid and free content resources. Be sure to check out the pinned comment or the video description if you wind up liking today's video. The first problem with relapse is every time we say we're going to do something and then we don't see that something through, it robs us of a little bit of self-worth and self-confidence. And when our self-worth and our self-confidence decreases, it becomes the perfect opportunity for addiction to sink its claws into us a little bit more, a little bit deeper. Because decreased self-worth, decreased self-confidence, right? If you can't even trust your own word to yourself, is ultimately always going to result in more depression, more anxiety, and more hardship. Addiction recognizes that every time you go back on your word and you relapse, it gets a one-up on you. So the second problem with relapse that I became to realize in my own journey was that it was outright embarrassing. As a husband to my wife, as a grown adult, we would go out to dinner and I would say to my wife countless times, I'm not going to order a drink tonight. I'm not going to get a beer. I'm not going to get a martini. And this is coming from someone who did not have an addiction or a dependence to alcohol. I just simply didn't want to waste the time or the money on alcohol anymore. And time again, we'd get to dinner, I would order a beer, I'd order a martini, she'd say, you said you weren't going to do that, but you never follow through on it anyways. I don't even know why I listen to you anymore when you say that. And there came to be a point where it was outright embarrassing. The embarrassment of saying, oh, I'm not going to order alcohol tonight, and then going to the restaurant and just ordering alcohol the moment I sat down, it got very, very bad. Let's put it that way. For something that wasn't even an addiction. Every time we relapse, quite frankly, it should be. It's embarrassing. It robs us of our self-worth and it robs us of our self-confidence. So how do we overcome relapse? How do we get past that? So mindset shift number one that I had was I decided to make addiction, I decided to make substance use non-negotiable. So this is, I'm quitting smoking weed for good, period. I'm quitting drinking alcohol for good, period. There's no circumstance, there's no situation, no matter how celebratory or how depressing, there's no scenario in which I'm going to go through the negotiation and the head game of, should I smoke one more time, should I not? Oh, it's a wedding, maybe I should have a drink, maybe I shouldn't. It's non-negotiable. And I recommend adopting this mindset because what I came to realize is that addiction is an irrational thought process. It doesn't make any sense. There's no reason behind our behavior. There's no reason to order a $20 martini that's predominantly ethanol just to wake up feeling crappy the next day. There's no reason to continue smoking weed if weed is destroying your relationships, your finances, your physical health, and your mental health. There's no rational reasoning to your behavior when you struggle from addiction, okay? So the moment I decided to stop negotiating with it, the moment I decided to stop trying to rationalize with addiction, trying to apply ration to something that's completely irrational, is the moment that decision became non-negotiable. Mindset shift number two, which is going to be a lot more controversial when it comes to addiction recovery, is screw one day at a time. There are literally people in AA and MA and NA who are living one day at a time for the rest of their lives. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of those programs, but I'm also here to acknowledge that they're not for everyone. There are people literally out there right now living lives never again thinking about their choice of drug, whether it was cigarettes, whether it was a narcotic, whether it was a drink of alcohol or a puff of weed. There are people literally living lives way beyond one day at a time. Now, this is what I have to say about that. In the beginning, when you're going through withdrawal, when you're going through that challenging stuff, one day at a time is an awesome motto, in my opinion, because it's like if I looked at Mount Everest and I said, okay, I have to climb this whole thing, it'd be much easier to break it down into sections. Or let me give you a better example. If I had to write a book and I was going to write a 100-chapter book, it'd be much easier to break it off one chapter at a time. So that makes sense, I'd say, for the first week to the first 90 days. But there comes a point when you make addiction, when you make substance use non-negotiable, where you need to let go of one day at a time. And I promise you, the moment you let go of the concept of one day at a time, the better off you're going to be. Because the person living one day at a time is basically saying, one day at a time, tomorrow might be different, I might fall off the wagon, things might fall apart, one day at a time. If addiction and substance use has become non-negotiable, then you don't have to live one day at a time anymore. It becomes very simple. If I don't pick up the drug, I don't relapse. If I don't relapse, I don't go through all the BS and all the regret that addiction has put me through. So for me, letting go of the concept of one day at a time was an incredibly powerful thing when it came to quitting weed, quitting smoking, quitting nicotine, quitting all the alcohol, whatever it was. If you need more help with that, I linked a book in the video description. It's called Rational Recovery by Jack Trimpey. I would highly recommend reading that book. Now, the third thing that I will say is, look, I understand statistically a lot of people are going to eventually lapse or relapse. And this is where we've been told the biggest lie ever in addiction recovery. The biggest lie ever is that you're an addict and that if you do it once, you're going to do it 1,000 times. Although that is largely my personality, although that is largely the personality of a lot of people probably watching this video, it absolutely doesn't have to be that way. If you did it once and you did it 1,000 more times, it's because you made the decision to do so. And a large part of that decision has to do with the subconscious programming that's been hardwired into us throughout years of addiction recovery that you're an addict, you do it once, you're going to do it 1,000 times. If you mess up once, it's going to be completely out of control. So if I smoke once, what am I going to do? I'm going to do exactly what I was told I was going to do. I'm going to do it 1,000 times. I'm going to come up with the cassette tape that plays in my head that says, you're an addict, you don't have a choice. If you did it one time, you're going to do it 1,000 times. So you might as well just do it a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time, and a fifth time, and a 500th time. This is a crock of BS, and I can prove it to you. If you grew a beautiful crop of, let's say, corn or plants or whatever it is you're growing on your farm, and you have hundreds of thousands of plants or thousands of plants, right? And then you had one bad seed, would you burn the entire crop, or would you simply replace that seed or that patch of crop that was damaged? You would simply replace the one seed. You wouldn't burn the whole crop down. Let me give you another example. If you were writing a paper and it had to be a 100-page essay and you had a typo of one word or maybe a typo of one paragraph, would you delete the entire paper and then start over from scratch? Of course you wouldn't. And you don't do this in real life. Every time you screw up at your job, do you burn the whole job down and start over? Every time you screw up with your kids or with your marriage, do you throw the whole thing out the window? Of course not. You identify what you did wrong and you fix it. And that's how I'm proving to you that you're not what you've been told you are. You're not the addict that they have told you that you are. But you've been programmed to think so. So if you do mess up, and things do get dicey, which they shouldn't if you're made it non-negotiable and you're not taking it one day at a time because you made the decision to be done with it. But if they do, if you don't adopt those mindsets and you do mess up, don't burn down the whole crop because of one bad seed. Don't delete the whole paper because of one bad paragraph. Identify what went wrong and get right back on track. There's no reason that you can't. And the sooner you get back on track, the sooner you're going to get back into that discovery of self-worth and self-confidence. The more you let things go off the rails, the more embarrassed you're going to be, the more regret you're going to be filled with, the more lack of self-worth and lack of self-confidence and lack of self-trust you're going to become filled with. And the more you fly off the rails, you know what that is? It's just fuel for more and more and more and more substance use. And then it's one excuse after the other and the cycle continues. This is how you break that cycle. And listen, I can say this, don't think of it as relapse. Think of it as regret. I'm about to relapse. No. That sounds stupid because that's what they told you you're going to do. So you're already programmed to think you're going to do that. I want you to say, am I about to do something I'm really going to regret? And then when you're in that moment, I want you to pause and I want you to say, what's the worst that's going to happen to me if I don't smoke weed? If I don't drink alcohol at this dinner? If I don't watch adult media content tonight? What's the worst thing that's going to happen to me? And I think what you're going to find is that worst case scenario is actually not a big deal at all. Yeah, I might get some cravings. I might have some irritability. But you know what? I'm going to wake up with more self-confidence, more self-trust, more self-worth, and I'm not going to wake up in regret and embarrassment. So next time you're thinking about relapsing, walk yourself through these 3 shifts in mindset. Ask yourself, what's the worst thing that happens if I don't wind up relapsing? Because chances are it's just a little bit of cravings and irritability. Okay, no big deal. And then look at the positives. What if I continue? What if I push through? What if I continue to make this non-negotiable and end this conversation that I'm having with myself right now? The last tip I'll have for you guys on relapse prevention is change your current state. So if you're thinking about relapsing, honestly, do some push-ups, exercise, go for a walk, pick up a book, watch a YouTube video, educate yourself on something, record yourself. You record yourself in your phone. Just talk to yourself. Call a friend. Do anything. Don't do nothing. Do anything. Do something. Don't do nothing. Because nothing leads to boredom. Boredom leads to that cycle of self-negotiation with addiction. Once you start to negotiate with something that's irrational, you're going to lose. And then you wind up in this whole cycle of relapse again. And then you say, oh, woe is me. I'm an addict. I've been told this is how I operate. This is how I am. So I might as well just roll with it. It's BS. It's a lie. And that's why I make the content that I make for you guys, to prove it to you. And I did prove it by showing you many other areas in your life where you absolutely would not behave that way. I promise you there's areas in your life where you wouldn't. Now, if you wound up enjoying this, check out the pinned comment. We got paid one-on-one coaching. We have free PDFs on quitting smoking weed, how to make this non-negotiable. And then we have our pre-launch Kick It wait list for our Crave Less product coming out really soon. All right, guys, I'll see you in the pinned comment or the video description. Oh, check out the Jack Trimpey book too. Incredible read.